Hello, everyone. It feels a little weird to start without a little, music or something. Anyways, welcome back. Hey, new background for was just around the corner here. Fall 2025. Almost unbelievable. Anyway, this short video, I'm going to talk again about, big surprise to all of you, a little bit more about Lacan's discourses, because I'm obsessed with them. And you should be too. And you might be if you're watching this. But anyway, look, I got a new office. Pretty nice. No expense spared on the new computer there for me. You see the new computer? My finger almost goes right through it. Today we'll talk a little bit more about Four Discourses, and I thought I'd maybe try to align it with people who are more familiar with the rhetoric curriculum. So you have rhetoric professor, speech comm professor, speech communication rhetoric. Not writing. I need to do a little more research in writing, but you could probably apply some of these ideas to Lacan's Four Discourses to the course that you teach if you're a writing rhetoric professor. There's two different worlds of rhetoric for those who don't know. There's people who come from the speech communication tradition, and those are people who pretty much start with Herb Wilkelm's Towards the Literary Criticism of Oratory in 1922, and then go forward and then start rewriting the past, moving, we're actually connected to Aristotle, and start moving kind of in this motion towards a speech comm rhetoric that started in a weird kind of hybrid mix between literature departments and theater departments. Most speech professors are theater professors.
Oh.
In the beginning. Because that's what's thought about enunciation. Using your stage voice. Speak to the audience. Use your stage voice. Project. And then there's writing rhetoric, which comes, I would say, we've always been a country of writing in the United States. We've always had what they call the mass experiment, literacy and democracy. So the idea of public education, incredibly important. The idea that everyone, in order to function in a democracy, needs to have rigorous schooling and learn to communicate and write and speak effectively. But the writing was really very important as the country got bigger and bigger and bigger. The newspapers and the high literacy rate in the colonies and in the early republic is a testament to that. So that the writing programs, though, as we know them today, writing rhetoric programs, I want to say 1960s in the MLA in Minnesota, where there was sort of a revolutionary idea that we should no longer teach modalities of writing. We should teach voice, and we should teach composition, putting ideas to page, whatever that might mean. And, of course, that atomizes very quickly in the writing rhetoric literature. A much more beautiful set of essays, I might say, than anything that we've produced in speech comm. I'm going to get letters for that one. But I think those are two different worlds. So you have the writing rhetoric world, which is going more towards we're all in on students, we're all in on student voice and student writing. And the politics of that, which is very deep, very interesting, very insightful. Peter Elbow et al., right? Who's the guy? There's a really, really great writer I've been reading a lot. Whose name escapes me at the moment, but he's a very good writing professor and very good. He's written a lot of stuff about equity and equality and things like that. From the speech comm side, it's like we look out to the world and talk and communicate and speak about the world at large, and students can kind of follow along if they want to, but we've kind of abandoned, or at least farmed out to graduate students or hourly employees, the teaching of traditional rhetoric the way the Romans and Greeks would have done it, which is teaching people how to speak in front of an audience to move them to change in some way, their feelings, their actions, their thoughts, or how to argue with other people in a public forum. And all that has kind of been pushed aside for what is what speech comm rhetoric is today, which is a lot more like political criticism at this kind of strangely social mixed level. I don't know how to really describe it, but the point being that we abandoned that. So maybe this will put a little bit more gas in the tank in terms of thinking about what is the location of the discourse that we're teaching in some of these classes. So let's take a look here. Hopefully this is going to work. I've been messing with my... Oh, that's beautiful. So you see I picked a different background here because I'm making school videos. So this is the typical classroom I would have at St. John's. Yes, thank you very much. I know it's a beautiful background. Yep, looks great. So these are the four discourses as lined out by Lacan in the notation that he provides a little bit in Encore and Accrete. And also Jacques-Alain Miller does a lot of this, writing these things down in his transcriptions of the seminars. A lot of it's in the underside of psychoanalysis. That seminar 23 of Lacan, if you want to read a lot of this, but a lot of it he's like, oh, I only have red chalk, so you might not be able to see the board too well. But we still have a pretty good transcription of those lectures. Okay, so let's start with the discourse of the master. Now, how does this discourse work? Well, the speaker, the subject, presents itself as the master, the one who knows, the one who has power, authority, however you want to describe a master, it's in the S1. The master is also the master signifier that makes all other things have meaning. So, for example, it could be democracy or freedom or making money, whatever that master signifier is, it puts all other knowledge, signified by S2, in order. But what's hidden and inaccessible, that's this part down here. This is the inaccessible, what Lacan calls the truth of the discourse, is always inaccessible, which is what is the thing that is being pasted over that can't be accessed because of the arrangement of speech. And that is that the master is just like us, a split subject, someone who is, to borrow words from Marx, alienated from themselves. They're not really sure why they desire what they desire. They have the same insight you do. Any master does. They have the same insight you do to your own motives and your own desires. Why am I not happy? Why am I so happy that this has happened? These kind of inquiries are inquiries that we ask of our own unconscious, and oftentimes the reply is silence, because we don't really know that economy of pleasure that's operating there. What we do know is that we get pleasure from the drive, pleasure from the circuit of the drive, not its completion, and pleasure from the objet, whatever it might be, and it changes as time goes on. It's that wanting and that desiring. And a good example of that is me making endless videos about the Four Discourses. And the result is desire. So what ends up happening is you get the creation of the master addressing you as, hey, you should know what to do, or here's the thing. You get kind of a secret thing to where the servant actually kind of knows a bit of desire, a little bit more about the master than the master actually knows about themselves. They have a little bit of this desire. They want something else. It produces desire. It produces want. And that's what this discourse does. So what kind of discourses might be the discourse of the master? And now keep in mind that none of these discourses are considered to be bad. There's some discourses that you wouldn't prefer. Like if you want a more democratic or revolutionary system, you don't want this discourse. But you might want this discourse in a finely tuned company, in the military, this kind of thing. So the master puts things in order. It says, look, I know what you need to be. You're sorted this way. And there's always this little bit of a mistake there. So one of the things that Lacan points out about this discourse is that the subject, the audience of the discourse, and I use these terms kind of lightly. This is like the object is what he calls it. I call it the audience. I would call this the rhetor. Let me get my toolkit here. Oops. Get my laser pointer, and then we'll go back. Okay. Rhetor, or speaker, or the subject addresses the object, the other. Oh, we jumped ahead, way ahead. So, look, I know how you're supposed to be sorted. I know what you mean. I know how this is all going to go. I'm going to put things in order. The result of which, since the master signifier is always lacking, is going to be some desire. There's going to be like, well, I kind of want, something to, it's not going to be completely satisfying. It just creates more desire because the master's never going to really know exactly what they want. A good servant will be able to interpret what the master wants or what their boss wants. Like a good worker will be able to interpret what the boss really wants. So sometimes you be at a new job and the boss will give some edict. And then you're like, oh, yeah. Somebody who's worked there is like, well, here's what you really need to do. Here's what they really want. Oh, okay, cool. So this course would be like business communication, business presentation, or public speaking are the courses that align with this, which is sort of like how to speak like this, how to order things, and how to deal with that excess of desire, the result of desire. It creates desire to want to do something or to be something. And I think these courses are very much the Master's Discourse, or should be taught in that way of the Master's Discourse, because what are you doing in business communication or business presentation or in public speaking in the way? You know, it's kind of like you have to kind of like show that you're an authority. This is kind of the traditional way. So I don't really teach it that way, but this is the traditional way it's kind of taught, I would say. So these courses in a traditional speech communication department, discourse of the master, I'm saying. All right. Discourse of the university, a little bit of a twist. The speaker or the subject presents itself as knowledge, a self-organizing knowledge. The master is hidden. There is a master organizing things, but it's hidden, it's inaccessible. So this headless knowledge presents itself and says, you're desirable. You want to be a part of this thing. And the result is a kind of a hysteria, a kind of a split, an alienation from the self in a way to where you're not really kind of sure. You're like, okay, cool. Yeah, I'm a part of this knowledge, but I'm not really sure what I know or what to do with it or what it even means. I mean, this is also like the model for graduate education or higher education. It's like, yeah, I have this biology degree, but what do I know? I have this history degree, but what do I really know? And what should I do with it? This kind of anxiety is the result of that discourse. But again, normal operations of the university or of what Lacan ended up calling the discourse of false science or kind of a scientism. Whenever I hear Neil deGrasse Tyson speak, I think of this relationship of discourse, which is like science is true. It organizes itself and you need to want to be a part of it. And then people are like, okay, yeah, okay. But then they're not really ever satisfied. So he has to say more. He always has to provide more discourse. And then what's, of course, off limits is the S1. And, of course, people are doing this all the time. They're like, oh, the university is in bed with Ray Kahn. The university is in bed with General Dynamics. The university made a deal with a conservative think tank for these materials or whatever. Or, I don't know, Jordan Peterson is coming to speak, and that shows that the university is actually conservative. So people are always trying to dig this out, but this will never be accessible. It will always be in terms of this. It'll always be in terms of the result, which is people trying to say, well, it's not really a headless knowledge, but they'll never actually be able to uncover the master. That's the important thing about this discourse is you can never get to the puppet master. It's just a hidden thing. It might even be that it's hidden is all you need to know about it. Umberto Eco has talked about that a little bit. Like it's a lot more powerful for people to believe you have some secret than the actual content of the secret that you might hold over them. That's the actual power of that kind of discourse. So what does this look like in speech communication courses? Well, the debate team or the debate program, I've talked about that endlessly, where debate is presented as this knowledge to end all knowledge, and you want to be a part of it, but at the end of it, you're still just as uncertain as you were before you went into it. And of course, debate is organized by master signifiers of its history, of things like the economy of the university, and the people who teach and promote tournament debate have a particular idea of mastery and where it comes from and all that. It's not necessarily sinister, but there are forces beyond just this is the correct way to argue as a natural set that are operating when we think about tournament debate or any team or program. Rhetorical theory also this way. Rhetorical theory presupposes to be sort of self-organizing and that you want to be a part of it, and it's supposed to provide you some deeper mastery, but you're left with the same kind of split and the same kind of anxiety about how the world works. And oftentimes rhetoric professors and graduate students reach a point where you find that for all of your rhetorical knowledge and your knowledge of how words work and how persuasion works and how people shape and twist meaning, you find yourself in the same powerless position as you were as a human being before you knew any of it. And that also can feel quite depressing, and you get quite cynical about that. But this is how rhetorical theory would present itself too. And the fact is, like, we can't reveal what it is that's the master behind that. But one of the questions might be, who gets to choose what's in the rhetorical theory curriculum? How is that determined? What cultures and countries do we look at might be part of the question of if we want to reveal that. But then again, Lacan says, be careful, because if you did reveal that and you put the master where the master is supposed to be is actually in the place of knowledge, the master's knowledge is not self-organizing. There's a master there. You wind up back here. So that's not particularly revolutionary. That's actually a conservative operation. So people are trying to say, oh, there's this power behind it. There's a sinister power behind it. Actually engaged in conservative politics, according to Lacan. It's not revolutionary one bit, because all you're doing is moving back to a more direct authoritarian relationship with the master's discourse. And some scholars have commented that the master's discourse might be out of date, maybe a relic of the past. I'm trying to think of the good word for it here, like kind of like something that's out of date and in the past, but we don't really use anymore, but it's interesting to look at. But I don't think so. I see the master's discourse all the time. And a lot of this is like in the Trump administration politics. A lot of people are like, oh, but Trump is really, these are actually Trump's ideas, or it's Project 2025, or this. The Trump administration is like, this is good economics, this is good business, this is what the Constitution says. And they want you to feel to be a part of it because you want to be a part of America. And you see even the followers are still like, if they were satisfied by it, they wouldn't be continuously pushing their desire and pushing for the drive for the satisfaction of more immigrants, more policies, more terror. They're always defending. And I think that shows that we're in that discourse there. Argumentation and debate can be this way too if it's taught, like a lot of times it's taught as a science. Like especially people who are into fallacy quizzes and fallacy tests, this is the discourse for that. Where it's like, oh, these are just true, like a mathematical formula, like true, like the wind true, or like looking at the trees and the sun true. It's just natural. And that kind of teaching is that. And then the history of rhetoric as well. Where does this come from? Well, this is how rhetoric was developed. And this is a historical discourse, so it's self-organizing knowledge. But of course, anybody who's taken a historiography class would know that historiography has a lot of politics and economics and things behind it that make it a little bit more, a little bit less self-organizing than people would purport it to be. So these are the classes I think are discourse at the university aligned. And they work quite well when they're taught that way. And debate teams work exceptionally well when they are taught in terms of that discourse. All right, next, discourse of the hysteric. This is what Lacan called the discourse of true science, but it's also the discourse that is that he named after the mark of the pathology of hysteria, which is somebody who cannot be satisfied by any answer. They continuously ask the same questions over and over again. They want to confirm the time of the meeting over and over again, and then they're still late or they're too early, and then they blame you for it. So this is the kind of hysteria in language that, again, this is a normal part of language. It's difficult to understand because hysteria is a pathology in psychoanalysis, but hysterical discourse is a part of normal discursive functioning. In fact, he calls this the discourse of true science and the discourse of teaching, which is the subject or the speaker pretends like they're unsure. And they ask for certainty from the audience, who then provides that certainty, which then they immediately doubt and undercut. This is like the top of this one you can think of as devil's advocate. Somebody who refuses to be satisfied, or someone playing a debate game with you. They refuse to be satisfied. They question everything you say. You're like, look, that's just the way it is. That's the way the world works. But, I mean, they have a desire. There's a reason why. And they have their own desire. They know what they want. That's what it symbolizes here. That's what the concept. They know what they want. They pretend to be unsure, but they know what they want. But this desire can never be exposed because then the gig will be up. But most people assume that the teacher wants you to learn. And that's why they're asking for mastery. Like, yeah, but are you sure that's the formula? Are you sure those are the motives that the president had when declaring the war? How can we know that that's why that country reacted that way? Or how do we know that the depression was caused by blah, 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 or that the devaluation of currency was... All of this comes from that. The result is knowledge. And the way I read this, my reading is, you get more and better and more interesting and more varied audience adapted ways to speak about knowledge. So everyone knows the master signifier, and you get frustrated in this situation because the questions don't stop. And even though you know this is true, you just keep repeating it and repeating it and repeating it. This person is never going to be satisfied. The speaker is never satisfied. So what comes out of that? Knowledge that you can say it in so many different ways. Knowledge that you can articulate in many different ways. This is what we would call in rhetoric audience adaptation. Audience adaptation. So I think this is a very good model of teaching. It's like, well, here's the questions about this thing. How do we know that it means what it means? Okay, I need to be able to say this in myriad ways. And of course, in a teaching situation, the teacher knows they want the students to be able to articulate in a variety of different ways and still maintain the same fidelity to the master signifier in terms of how their statements are organized. Excuse me. So, persuasion is like this, right? Persuasion would be a good class that's organized like that if you guys teach persuasion. Group communication is kind of like this. And any group project maybe would kind of be directed this way. And rhetorical criticism. I think rhetorical criticism is definitely modeled this way, which is that you inquire after, you put, it's a little more difficult because you put the text in the position of the rhetor, and then you have the text deny everything you say about it. Because what rhetorical criticism is odd because it's not really a method. It's more a rhetorical exercise to show how fungible and how uncertain meaning can be, and how dependent any kind of solidified meaning is on audience and context, which all rhetorical critics know that that's the only way one can say, well, this is what this means, is you have to place it in a time period with an audience and a place, and you can say, well, this is the meaning that is there. But as soon as you take one of those two away, you're adrift again. The whole thing atomizes back into particles, and then you have to collect the particles again back into some kind of meaning, right? This is what Michael Calvin McGee means when he talks about diachronic and synchronic meaning in terms of the ideograph, his famous contribution to ideology and rhetorical criticism. But I think that essay is also modeled like saying, do it like this. So you place your object of rhetorical criticism in the position of speaker, and then you just try to master it. And through the mastering and trying to master it in different things, it's always going to refuse that. And what we could say about the hidden desire is like, well, we don't know the intent. This is when we say intent doesn't matter in rhetorical criticism. We say, well, we don't know the intent of the rhetor, and we don't know the intent of the language is like either a parasite or a symbiote. It has its own motives. So we can't know for sure at all what they were trying to do, but we can make a good guess. And by making that good guess, we try to master the discourse, and we fire at it. And we gain so much more knowledge about the text. This is why it's never going to be possible to stop writing about Lincoln's Cooper Union or whatever, because we can always generate more things to say about it by running the text through that exercise. So I think it's really a perfect model of how rhetorical criticism works and why rhetorical criticism is value for the generation of knowledge, even though it is not a method as per, other humanities would have. But method's overrated anyway. Read Gadamer. He's like, stop borrowing stuff you don't understand to make yourself feel cool. Give it up. Give it up. That's my read of Gadamer. Give it up, baby. Maybe that should have been a laugh track. I don't know, but Gadamer's not that funny. Gadamer. Okay, well, it worked with the test audience. All right, last one, and this is going to be a short one, which is the discourse of the analyst. The revolutionary discourse, as Lacan calls it, the discourse that actually changes things, and probably the most dangerous discourse at all, because knowledge is hidden and put in the position that it's there but inaccessible, which causes anxiety. You present yourself as like, hey, I'm desirable. You want to talk to me. You want to be close to me. You want to be with me, hystericizing the audience. And so they're going to continue to demand that you provide this knowledge that you can't provide. What the result is the creation of new master signifiers that are based on this relationship, not anything else. These master signifiers are based on the relationship of questioning with anxiety back to the person you desire, the transference, right? The transference in psychoanalysis, which is where the patient feels a deep connection to the therapist, and the therapist has the countertransference. They care about their patient. And in that care, it's like, well, it matters what the speaker thinks. It matters what the rhetor thinks. They have the knowledge I need to quell my anxiety, to understand myself better. I keep saying anxiety, but the split subject is really a subject who cannot have complete understanding of themselves and their motives and what makes them go and what makes you do what you do. You have a good narrative about why you're where you are and who you are and what you stand for, but you'd never really fully, completely know why you want what you want and why you do what you do. That's never complete. So you go to the therapist because you're like, I feel off. I'm not sure why I feel this way. I'm not sure why I'm acting the way I am. And the therapist provides that desire for you to keep doing that. And eventually you talk yourself into a new arrangement, which then will take all of the things that are causing you this stress in your life and rearranging them. The S2 will fall into line now that you have the confidence to master your own life and put all the knowledge you have in order in a way to where you can function. Again, even the most revolutionary discourse here that changes the master signifier is still conservative in the sense that the patient goes off and they can live a normal life. They can go to work, they can have their family, they can have friends. They're not like paralyzed or crying all the time or what have you. They're not depressed, hanging out in their room, that kind of thing. But if you take this to the societal level and you say, what would this look like in the university? Well, the university would be the most dangerous institution out there. Unfortunately, the university has chosen this discourse to run itself, which is we want to produce uncertain subjects who aren't quite ready to take the reins. They just kind of want to be able to pay a mortgage, have a car, and have a career, have a family. They kind of fall into line with terms of neutral knowledge, and they don't think of knowledge as being something that's created or fungible or that they could replace with their own mastery. They don't think of that at all. It's only when you reach this level of education that people are like, yeah, I can create the world anew. I could be a revolutionary subject. I have a better way of organizing things. And that kind of person is usually, attacked and disparaged because people, the enemy of the good is the comfortable. And people are usually quite comfortable and they don't want a revolutionary change whatsoever. So what classes do we teach like that? None. I can't think of one. Unless you're teaching something incredibly, radically, weirdly wild, and I want to hear about it. I was thinking a rhetorical debate course modeled a certain way would reach that conclusion to where the students would feel like, oh, I really can change human knowledge. I can rearrange it in ways beyond just articulating it differently. I can actually change the roots of knowledge itself by providing new terms of mastery or a new index. You can think of this as the index to a book. A brand new index would shape the way that, or a brand new table of contents maybe, would shape maybe people don't read books the way I do. You look at the index, you get a sense of how the book is organized or how the knowledge in the book is organized, and you can make judgments. But if you look at the table of contents, which most people do, you say, okay, here's how they're approaching, especially a book where you know something about the content that the book covers. You say, well, this is what it's covering. This is how it's doing it. These are the choices that are being made. So I think a rhetorical debate class, a debate class that's modeled after Mercier and Sperber's kind of sense of debate as a mitigating discourse of things like my side bias, which most of us call confirmation bias, and quick to judge on evidence, quick evidence fallacies. All that's mitigated in terms of a full, open kind of debate practice, which I don't think we really teach. I think we teach debate as a kind of true discourse or science or a master signifier itself. We don't teach debate as the world of unsatisfied discourse, which forces you to create your own terms of mastery for what you've heard and talked about. So that's what I'm thinking about today. While prepping for my classes, I was thinking about, well, maybe Lacan's Four Discourses have something to say to us about how we do our classes. Maybe so. I don't know. What do you think? Leave me a comment. We're out of here. I actually have to do some real work on my class at some point. I really do. All right. See you guys later. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.
So it is like a beacon for me in all that we can see. Like